All button hitbox style controllers are all the rage right now, and some models can be hard to obtain. The good news is that you can build your own, arguably better version right now and skip the pre-orders and waitlists. Even if you have no experience building or modding fight sticks, with so many plug-in and play components these days, they basically come together like Lego. We'll skip all soldering and just go with standard over-the-counter parts. Trust me, this will be easy. You will first require an enclosure. This is the best place to start because it can dictate some of your theme options and it can change up the amount of buttons you'll need to order. For example, you'll need at least 3 auxiliary buttons, but you can utilize up to 6. Most of the standard all-button layouts use 24mm buttons for everything but the jump function, but there is another style called Shiokenstar which makes use of 30mm buttons for the normals. It all depends on the material you want and the look you're going for. You can even build one yourself, but I'll leave a link in the description for several case vendor options. The one we're going to use for this build is a custom one-off from a Reddit user called The Other Side 1. He typically uses just a single piece of wood that has been routed out to the appropriate depth as the foundation for his cases, and he used a fixed base router and a solid piece of cherry for this one. It's hard to theme pure wood because you can't utilize art very well, but I thought we could still lean into a Ryu angle. A little red for the headband and some whiter gray to represent the gi will probably work just fine. Let's get started. We first need 15 24mm buttons and a single 30mm button. I double up on all the buttons so I could swap the caps and then keep the extras for a future project. As far as the colors, I did decide to go with some grayer ones over white because Ryu always seems a bit grungy to me. I also picked up a 30mm Ryu art button and then 4 concave caps to use on my aux buttons. Next, I grabbed a Neutrik and a rubber boot to go with it. The printed circuit board or PCB is the brains of the stick. These can get fairly spendy depending on which systems require compatibility. We'll go all out on this one for demo purposes and utilize a Brook Universal and the PS5 daughter board add-on. If you only plan on playing on PC, then you can get by with a much cheaper option. I like to get some of these little feet to stick the PCB in place, but some cases will have options to screw it down. We will also need a USB Type A to Type B cable. You can get right angle ones to hug the case internals better, or straight also works fine. They typically need to be around a foot long so you have a few mounting options. Don't skimp and get the 6-inch ones unless you know they're going to work for your case. We also need a 20-pin wiring harness, a 5-pin to all-button conversion harness, and a 4-pin L3-R3 touchpad button harness. Then, we'll need about 10 feet of male USB A to B cord to link our controller to the console or PC. These are Sanwa screw-ins, but you can go with whatever brand you prefer. Notice there are grooves on one side of the rings. When you reassemble, make sure to orient those ridges face up to bite down better on the underside of the top. I made a video previously on switching button caps and it's extremely easy. Just use a screwdriver to gently push the tabs up and away until they are free of the housing. Then align the prongs with the holes and insert the new cap. It's fun to mix and match, and I think the red rims will call to mind Ryu's red headband. Now we can change the aux button caps to concave to help differentiate them from the main set. After we get it done, we can test fit them to see if we still like this direction. Yeah, looks about how I pictured in my head. We're good with it. This 30mm Ryu face button is a snap-in, but the caps work just fine for screw-ins, so we can change this one just like we did the others. Now that we are committed to our buttons, we can screw them in. I actually like doing this in my lap better, but the filming works better on the table. I try to orient them all the same way just so the wiring is slightly easier. They are all screwed in, tightened down, and ready to go. On to the next part of the build. When you get your Neutrik, you may initially be confused as to why it looks backwards. You just need to unscrew it, turn it around manually, and button it back up. We need to insert this Neutrik, but this case didn't come with holes. With most cases, this shouldn't be an issue, and they should come ready to go, but we will still need to drill these out this time. I just grabbed a bit with an appropriate diameter and taped off how deep we needed to drill so we had a clear stopping point. After it was good, I slipped the boot on and screwed it down. Then I plugged in the USB A to B cable to get an eye for where the PCB should sit. I think it works best in this lower corner over here. Now to dig into this PCB. We will orient it like this, but we're going to leave it floating for the moment, so don't stick it down just yet. Also, here is this little PS5 daughter board add-on. You'll need to plug in these little cables, and then there will be two tiny wires, one red for power and one black for ground. Hook those into the 20-pin screw terminals at the appropriate spots. I'm going to remove it for now so it's easier to see how the rest of the wires go, but I'll put it back here in just a bit. Now for the wiring. First, grab your 20-pin joystick and button harness and plug this end into the Brook Universal. You'll notice there is a 5-pin wiring attachment which typically connects to a joystick like so. For a stickless all-button build, we want to attach this conversion harness so that we can map our directions to buttons. This is where you'll connect the wiring harness to the board. Make sure to orient the orange and red wire end nearer to the USB connection. From there, we can begin wiring the grounds, which are colored black in this harness. They are daisy chained together, so just start with an in button and make sure every button in our set of 8 normals gets a connection. Now we can wire the top row of punch inputs. I'll put the color guide up on the screen, but you can also look at the length of the wires to get an idea where they will connect. Remember, this stick is upside down, so the button order will look backward. Once those are done, we move on to the next row, our kicks. It's the same process as before, and here is the colored order. Now we're on a roll. Let's wire the movement functions now. The up button is this larger 30mm one, and it works well to think of it as a jump button. Here is the colored order for all 4 buttons. We need to have some auxiliary buttons, and this case was cut to fit 4 of them. We will connect the daisy chain of ground wires again, and then connect the wires for start, select, and mode. We have one extra, so we will plug in the L3R3 touchpad harness and choose the one we want. In this case, touchpad seems best. We won't need the extra hookups and can just leave them floating in the case. This case is actually pretty thin, so I'm going to bend the connection prongs just slightly so we can get the door back on. You can solder the connections to the prong sides for true low profile buttons, but that's beyond the scope of this assembly. Just a slight bend is all we need. Now we need to return to our little PS5 upgrade board. Plug in those tiny wires, red for power, black for ground, and the direct connection to the board. Once we're happy with the position of everything and there is no undue stress on wiring coming to or from the PCB, we can anchor it to the inside of the case with these little sticky feet. There is a handy caddy for a universal board in the PS5 add-on, but I didn't have one on hand for this build. We've got ourselves a wired and assembled build. We just need to throw some stickers on the inside of the case and update our Brook firmware. Now to play some Ryu and give this thing a spin. If you haven't messed with an all-button controller, they are pretty fun. Had to check out the PS5 compatibility and the touchpad functionality as well. All good. Thanks for hanging out while we assembled this all-button controller. Hopefully it was helpful and gave you a few things to consider as you build your own. Now for some glamour shots of our finished build. Thanks for watching. Support your locals, and I'll see you next time.